Hello and welcome to the It's Your Effin' Journey podcast. My name is Melissa Hemming, and if a life coach and a therapist had a baby, you give me. I am always so excited to wish you a happy Monday and bring you along for a little ride. And today is sort of a random topic because it's totally not in my wheelhouse anymore. But I thought it was really important because, sometimes I, base the program offerings that I have and or the podcast topics about things that I'm seeing a lot of in therapy. And currently I have a caseload with a good handful of young moms. And so I wanted to talk about my journey through my pregnancies, which were, I always joke like I am in a wild part of parenting right now where it is just so fucking different compared to the way that it used to be. And it's really interesting to see how it evolves. But I wanted to talk about pregnancy and early motherhood because I think there are some things that moms need to hear. And I find myself in these sessions saying things a lot like fed is best. And if it's going to save your sanity, adding some formula to your baby's bottle or even switching from breastfeeding, that it's okay. I know that there are things that I wish that I knew or heard or ways that I was supported when I was a young mom. And I just wanted to talk about them today. So I know this might not appeal to some of my audience, but I think it's important enough. It was important enough for me to share some things just so that as a young mom, you figure out that this is your effing journey and yours alone. And it's absolutely nobody's place to judge. And I know sometimes that can be challenging if you're not surrounded by the right medical professionals or supports in your life. So I want to start with, I guess, our song, right? What time is it? Podcast time. It's a celebration. What time is it? Podcast time. So my first daughter, Kaylin, was born in 2004. And that pregnancy was so interesting to me because I guess it started at like 30 weeks. I had preterm labor and I found myself in the hospital on an extended stay trying to get her to stay in there for as long as we could. So I think I was in the hospital for a couple days, maybe a couple weeks. I don't know. But then I was on bed rest. And it was funny because once I was being medicated to keep her in longer, once it was finally time for her to come, we could not get her out. And that was a long and torturous labor process, which ended with me. I just remember they were like, we have to do an emergency C-section. And I was terrified. Now, this is the reason that I was terrified. And this is why I think it's so important to talk about this and for me to obviously continue to talk about it, even though I gave birth 7,000 years ago. Because when I was married to Justin at the time. And Justin and I did all of like the parenting classes that were offered through the hospital. We did the tour of the hospital. We did the labor and breathing and all of those classes. And I remember so distinctly sitting in that class and the instructor was like, now I have to tell you. She literally was like, I have to tell you guys that some of you, gasp, are gonna have a C-section. And it was said just like that. So all the moms are in the class like, oh my God, please don't let it be me. I don't want a C-section. And it was scary. It was really fucking scary how that was presented in our childbirthing class. And so then, you're in this class like, this is going to happen to some of you. Please be prepared. And then you're in the hospital bed and they're like, you have to have an emergency C-section. And you literally feel like your world is caving in on you because you didn't want to be that person. You didn't want to be that statistic. You didn't want to be the person that ended up with a C-section. And at this point, I was in so much fucking pain. I was strapped down to the hospital bed. Like they had like the things on my arms because they were reeling me into the operating room. And I just was like, get this fucking kid out of, like, get her out of me. I didn't care how she came out at that point. I was in so much pain and I just wanted it to be over. But my C-section ended up being amazing. I loved all of it. I love, to this day, I love that a baby never came out of me for, I mean, whatever reason. I loved I thought the recovery process was relatively easy. I mean, I have nothing to compare it to either because I never had a baby the other way. But there's nothing wrong with a fucking C-section. I mean, sure, it's surgery. So, like, if you are not wanting to have surgery, I understand wanting a regular birth, but it doesn't make you any less than for having a fucking C-section. And that's the rhetoric that I hate. Is, first of all, C-sections are not that bad. They're not that bad at all. Secondly, you're just as much of a mom whether a baby comes out of your fucking stomach or your vagina. And don't let anyone ever tell you differently. And I know there's like a lot of push for like vaginal birth after cesarean. To me, that this is my fucking journey, and that wasn't part of mine. So I had no interest. The minute that I had my first C-section, they were like, you know, whenever you get pregnant again, you can just sort of sign up for your C-section. And I was like, hands down, that's me. I never want to go through that birthing process again. I had no interest. It just was not for me. Now, another part of pregnancy / being a mom or a young mom that I had made a decision about very early on was breastfeeding. And this is another, see, I like to share these because like I didn't have someone in my life advocating for a C-section. I didn't have someone in my life saying I did not breastfeed. So first of all, I was adopted, so I wasn't breastfed. I was fed from a bottle of formula, and I am fine, and I am alive, and I am thriving. And so I mean, is I didn't get breastfed a reason why I never felt connected to breastfeeding? I don't really know why I never felt connected to breastfeeding. I just always, and I don't mean to offend when I say this, I think it's really important, as I said, for me to share my perspective because I didn't hear enough of it, and I know other moms are not hearing enough of it too. But it just didn't feel natural to me. And I know it's the most natural thing that you can do because you have to feed your fucking baby, right? To me, it just didn't feel natural. It never did. I worked at a daycare. So I worked at a daycare starting in high school for like a good decade. So I was around a lot of different, you know, ways that you raise children, decisions that you make. And, you know, I just found breastfeeding to be, as I said, not natural. It just didn't seem natural to me. And the process itself seemed really complicated. It seemed like a really fucking hard journey. And I just wasn't here for it. So this was sort of tricky because, you know, I think back about like my growth and my confidence journey and, you know, all the ways that I've changed through the years. And it's sort of funny because sometimes when I look back, I'm like, I never could do what I'm doing now. And sometimes I'm like, I always had this sort of like, fuck you, like rule breaker, I'm going to do my own thing type of thing. Even if I didn't necessarily have the words or the confidence to describe it or be like, shut the fuck up, this is what I'm doing and this is my decision and this is what's right for me. But I did. I made a decision during my pregnancy that I was not going to breastfeed. I was not going to breastfeed Kayla. Not for 1 minute. I wasn't going to try it. I wasn't going to see how it went. I wasn't going to get a pump and play it by ear. I just was a hard no with breastfeeding from the very beginning. And this was a hot take in 2004, and it wasn't met with a lot of kindness. And again, I don't really know, like I can't remember my thought process back then. I just remember that was not for me. So, and I had to be pretty assertive about it, you know, and again, I don't know how much intentionality went behind that at the time, like I said, but I do remember like, okay, we're, you know, the lactation person's going to come in, and I was like, I'm not breastfeeding, I'm bottle feeding. And honestly, like looking back, I don't even know how much pushback I got. There were certain people who I felt judged from. It wasn't my parents. My parents bottle fed me, so there was no judgment on their end. And I don't really know, but I do know some medical doctors and some of the nurses were like confused or whatever. And I work with so many moms right now who are like, for some reason, I don't know if it's because of their health insurance, but I do get a significant amount of people who are in the military. And like right now I'm thinking of one client who I have who she had a baby, I don't know, 5 weeks ago. Her husband was home for 1 week from his deployment and is now back to being deployed. So she is literally, her life is pumping, even if the baby gave her a 5-hour stretch the other night, but she can't go the 5-hour stretch because she has to pump every hour and a half. And so she's doing this alone. She like has some familial support, but she's primarily doing this alone and waking up herself to pump, and then also waking up and feeding her daughter on demand. And every single session, I'm like, I just want you to know that you have choices, because I don't want her to feel any less than for either, as I said, filling, doing supplementing with formula or switching to formula altogether. But moms seem to be really nervous about, well, the expense is a real one. That's a real concern. I totally understand. But also recalls on the formula. And I don't know too much about that. I just, I know that babies need formula. And so, what is the worst thing that could happen from feeding your baby formula? That it gets fed, that it sleeps longer. And I guess because of my feelings about breastfeeding, I'll never understand why people don't make the simpler choice to just make sure your baby is fed. And so that because your mental health is so fucking important. And if you are, I said to her, like, how are you feeling from the lack of sleep? Is this something, and again, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? Like, it doesn't have to be, I gave up on breastfeeding. It could mean during the night, I'm going to supplement with a formula so that I don't have to worry about that pump in the middle of it. Well, actually, I don't know if that would even work, because she may have to like express it. I don't know. Breastfeeding is very complicated. Again, to each his own for whatever your version of, but there is no version. There's no fucking such thing as perfect parenting. And I think if you sort of embrace that from the very beginning, whether you are the mom who wanted to have a natural birth and you found yourself with an emergency C-section, or whether you wanted to breastfeed for your baby's first 3 years and you are unable to do it. Maybe you have low iron. I think that is something that I actually did say. If it was someone that I didn't feel comfortable with explaining my views, I did say that I had low iron and I couldn't breastfeed. I did lie. I did. I remember that. I don't know who it was to, but I did lie. I said I had low iron. And you know what? If you have to fucking lie to people, lie to fucking people. Whatever it takes. Own your story, but if you're not in the place, I think that's the whole message, is like, as a new mom, as a young mom, as a new mom, and even if it's your 5th baby, you are going through it emotionally. You are going through all the hormone changes, and your mental health is so important. I guess that's my message, is whatever you have to do to take care of yourself during this time, if you care. I go back to this so often with parents, is that if you are the kind of mom who is worried about your kids, worried about what happens to them, worried about their future, worried about the care that you're giving them, you are a great mom. And if you feed them from a bottle, from a formula, if you have the surgery to get them into this world, you are a good mom, and you are doing the best that you can with the circumstances that you're given. And I just want you to take a deep breath and know, and I don't know if this makes you feel better or makes you feel worse, but people are going to be fucked up no matter what, right? There's things that impact us throughout our lives, throughout our childhood. There's ways that our parents have hurt us that we may not really understand, and they may not have wanted to do to us. And what do? We overcome. We go to therapy. We move through it. We work through it. We have experiences. We give each other grace. And your kids are going to be no different. I think that the best kind of parent is the kind of parent who can show up as real and imperfect and with love and kindness and apologetic. Don't ever feel sorry to say sorry. And if you have to say, I always joke, Kaylin, I took her binky away at 6 months old, and I think she was way too young. And ever since then, I don't know about now, but she always was like sticking things in her mouth. And I was like, oh my God, I took her binky away too young. I've ruined her forever. There's going to be times that you have those feelings, and they're going to be okay. And having you there who can be real and authentic and genuine and loving. And honestly, like, this is why I do all the things that I do. I go to therapy. I process my thoughts. I try to be as mindful as I can be. And I try to be imperfect. Well, I don't have to try at that. I am fucking imperfect and really a hot mess. But at least I can say to my kids, I have done the best that I can with what I've been given. And that's all that I can do for you too. And that's how I can support you, hopefully, through all the remaining days of my life, is be here for you and model for you how I take care of myself and how I show up raw and real and authentic and imperfect and still wanting to do the best by you, because you're the best thing that I've ever done. And I think being a parent and a mom specifically, when you have a baby, there's so much on your mind and so much that concerns you and overwhelms you. And there's so much that you can't control, that what can you control? And in those moments of like lack of sleep and, not knowing what you're doing and not feeling particularly confident, just go back to what feels natural to you. And it's about listening to your gut and following what you think is right and ignoring the noise. It's the same concept of this whole podcast. This is your fucking journey. People are always going to talk. And, I don't know if I've even shared this on the podcast before, but there's this like old sort of fable. And is that what it's called? The little story. And the story is a old man is walking with his donkey and a young boy through the village. And the older man is walking with a donkey and the boy is on its back, and he's walking through the village, and the villagers are like, what the fuck? Look at that young boy on that donkey making that old man carry him. What a selfish little kid. And then you flip it around and the little boy is walking the donkey with the old man on the back of the donkey, and they walk through the village, and the villagers are like, what the fuck? Look at that old guy making that young boy walk that donkey through the village. And the point of this little story is that people are going to talk about you no matter what you do. They're inevitably going to. So do what's right for you, and don't feel like you have to explain or justify or convince anyone of what your decision is, especially when you are a new mom and you are going through it. So do you, be you, listen to you, and please, 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 if you are having the girl that I was referring to, that client that had a baby 5 weeks ago, her first session was a week after she gave birth. And she was like, I knew, because I've had depression and anxiety most of my life, I just wanted to be, I wanted to start this while I was in the thick of this. And so I've been seeing her since she just had her baby a week, 4 weeks ago at this point. So take care of yourself, and mental health is so important, and do whatever you can to support yourself during this time. And I'm always here if you need anything at all. Shoot me a message, say you need a referral. Psychologytoday.com has a great find a therapist tool. You can search by insurance type, you can search by their face, you can search by location, and you deserve to get the help that you need. And you also deserve to drown out the bullshit around you. So I hope this episode was helpful to someone out there today. Please share it if it was helpful to you. Screenshot it, tag me in your stories. Thank you for being here. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week. Mwah!